So we are live now. Hello, folks. This is Lowell Ann, and welcome to Being Your Own CEO interview series. My goal with this series is to introduce local entrepreneurs here in Victoria and to get some profile on Google Plus and YouTube for them, and actually to help them get started in this new Google world. I also love finding out what makes them tick as business people, because I know that we can all learn from those observations and apply some of those lessons to our own businesses. So this morning I would like to introduce to you Nadine Hanchar. She's a counselor, a consultant, a facilitator, and a trainer with a business called Progressive Edge Plus NLP Incorporated. So welcome, Nadine. Are you having fun with Google Plus yet?
I'm starting.
It's a journey that most of us we all start in the same place pretty much, and it just we just work our way through it. And so this is one of these opportunities, and not long ago, Nadine, in her role as a facilitator, facilitated something really interesting between some companies or members of a company here in Victoria, and also some members of that same company who were in Newfoundland. And so she made use of this medium that we're using right now to do that work with them. So she's on her way. So my idea this morning was that we really want to get to know you, Nadine, and I had you sort of give me a bio, and my goodness, what an impressive bio that was. And so there were a number of things that really jumped out for me, and the first one was that you started working at age 14, and you told me earlier that you had to lie in order to get that first job. And where was that?
That was in Prince George, and I started work at a Tasty Freeze, and so my first job was making milkshakes, and I think we had 151 flavors, and flipping hamburgers. Yeah.
Wow. At 14, not many of us are mature enough at 14 to take on even that. So I thought that was really fun. But then, as I was reading your bio, there were a number of other things that you did. You worked in a clothing store, and you worked in a theater. That must have been fun for a person at that age.
Yes, I had lots of experiences with that. I did everything from being a candy girl behind the counter to being the person that sells you your tickets. And we used to do midnight matinees, and I remember there was a fellow that was drinking in the theater, and I ended up having to bring him out to the lobby, and when he stood up he was about, 6'4", and he followed me very gracefully out to the lobby, and I had to tell him that he couldn't drink, and he could either leave or he could stay without drinking. And he actually said hi to me every time he saw me after that in the community.
Wow. So you must have done it well. Wow. So yeah, you in the green room we talked about all these jobs, and of course I was asking you what motivated you to go to work so early, and what made you need to do that. And you said you had to support yourself when you were not very much older than 14.
Well, 17.
You were 17. Wow.
Yeah.
And that was when you were waitressing in an upscale restaurant.
Yes, actually that was in Qualicum Beach. Yes.
Ah, so a move to the island. somewhere happened somewhere in there. Right. And then you said that you worked in a bank, and at that point you started doing some workshops on the side in personal growth. So,
Um, yes, I'd always been interested in people and what makes people tick, and I started doing workshops actually when I was 16, and I did my first transcendental meditation class when I was 16. And then I took every workshop on communication or whatever was going on. I loved to learn, and I loved anything to do with people. And so at 18, I was taking a couple of workshops at that time, and I noticed that I was I was actually ending up facilitating for the facilitator, because they weren't able to control the energy of the group. And so at that point, I decided, well, I could probably lead a workshop. So I put together some material and I put it out there. And lo and behold, people came and we had a great time and everybody enjoyed it. And so I started doing that as a way to earn extra money.
wow. Yes, and I mean that's really young to be moving into that world of facilitation and training. That's I find that it's extremely impressive. But now I'm looking here again. But you somewhere in this age period you decided to open a store. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, I also got married, at age 19, and that same year we decided to open a store. My husband at that time wanted to rent windsurfers on the beach, and at that time nobody knew what a windsurfer was because they hadn't really hit North America in a big way yet. And so when I looked into what it would take to buy windsurfers to rent on the beach, I found out you needed to have a store. And so I went, okay, well, if we need a store to buy them, then we need to have a store. So I went about finding out how to open a store, and I found a space, and I got a loan from the bank, which I was a bit shocked that they even lent me money at the time because I didn't have a business plan. I kind of winged it. Of course, you couldn't get away with that today, but back then things were a little looser, and they gave me, I think it was a $20,000 loan at the time, and I opened a store. And so we did all your high-end risk sports, scuba diving, windsurfing, downhill skiing, cross-country skiing, all kinds of things. And we also made 2 trailers and rented windsurfers at Qualicum Beach and Parksville Beach.
Wow. Well, and when we were discussing this, what I found interesting was that you just, well, if this is what we need to do, this is what I'm going to do. And in the green room, we talked about that a little bit, and I discovered through questioning you that you came from an entrepreneurial family. So the whole idea of being in business was not a foreign idea to you, and so you just and I suggested that maybe because you saw it in the family, there wasn't the fear, and you said no, you just went ahead because of ignorance.
I think when you don't know what you're doing, sometimes you just do what you need to do. And I agree that my dad had a huge influence on me. My dad was one of these fellows that could do anything. So he was wonderful with electrical, he was great with mechanical, or he could build anything. And he was the kind of guy that changed his career in his lifetime many, many times, not because he had to, but because he wanted to learn something new or to do something different. And he had another fellow, an engineer from Victoria, actually. His name was Don Bjorth, and he always wanted my dad to work on whatever project he was working on. Sorry, my phone is ringing. Anyway,
Can you lift it off the receiver?
I can't get it to stop unless I hang up on them. There we go. Sorry about that. Never fails, right? Anyway, so my dad was an entrepreneur, and this fellow always wanted him on all of his projects. And so my dad changed his career many, many times and was a very strong entrepreneur. Yeah.
So you come by it really honestly.
I do.
Right. So then you talked about there's a period in there when you did go into private practice, and I would kind of at this stage of the game, I mean, I wanted to get to know your formative years, how you went there, and so forth. But so I'm kind of curious as to what attracted you to NLP. And for our viewers, we need to not use these acronyms, neuro-linguistic programming. And could you in a nutshell kind of say what that is? What is NLP, and what attracted you to it?
Well, NLP is a communication model, and it's a communication model that you can apply to business, to education, to health, to counseling, to consulting work. It's a very large field. It works with how we run the human computer that is us. So how we form our strategies, how we process information, how we work with the people around us, and how to do that more effectively and more successfully. And it was developed by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. John Grinder was a linguist, and Richard Bandler was a computer scientist, which is why it got its name. And they studied what people did successfully and how they had that success. And they broke that down into doable, learnable chunks. And then that's where it sort of sprung from. And it's, of course, grown from there.
Right. And from what I have stumbled on, and I know a little bit about NLP, I think that there are many professions and organizations that make use of the principles and the observations that come from NLP. Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's very true. There are many people that use the NLP skills and tools. A lot of them don't call it NLP because it's a hard thing to describe what it is.
Yes. Yeah. So I think I remember seeing somewhere where that various police forces make use of it.
That's true. And border crossing guards and things like that.
Yeah.
As a lie detector tool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And certainly many coaches and counselors and consultants and all of the human development people, I would say most of them have stumbled on NLP in some form or another, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yes, many.
Yeah. So, but what was it about NLP that attracted you?
Well, when I was taking my training, I was taking some counseling training with actually a person who was a social worker, and he, in his training, he basically said to me, if you're going to be a counselor and you're going to do it well, you need NLP. And I'd never heard of NLP at that point. I didn't know what it was. I didn't have a clue.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I started to research it, and that's when I got involved with doing my training. And I liked it, and I found that it got results. So I was impressed by it.
Well, I mean, all the things that you do today, I know that you make use of it in many ways, but I just want to raise the fact that you didn't just take a few courses, weekend courses in NLP. You really, when I look at the pages of qualifications that you've amassed over the years, I can see that you have taken your involvement with NLP to the very highest. I mean, you're a master trainer now as an NLP specialist.
Yes, I've trained with a lot of the most well-known and most formative trainers in NLP,
Mm-hmm.
and I have uh, gotten to the level of master trainer at this point in my career. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And and I mean, I've noticed. I mean, you took some time out somewhere along the way to raise a family, and and so and I'm thinking that like I'm curious to know when you kind of branched out away from being um, a facilitator and toward being a counselor, because I noticed in your bio here that you counsel, you do um, uh, relationship counseling with couples and with families and with organizations and so forth, and it seems to me that that really moves into an even deeper level. So what was that, just a kind of a natural progression that took you from communications and facilitation and then just kind of progressed toward counseling, or was there something that made you decide that you needed to go deeper? How did that happen?
Well, I think what happened for me was I was doing the facilitating, and I noticed that people would talk to me. So I had pretty good people skills from a very early age. And I found that people would tell me things that they just wouldn't tell other people. And that's what really sort of started me going into looking at being a counselor. I thought, well, I need to get more skills in this area, and this could be a career that I'd be really interested in. So I started to do some counseling training. I started to do NLP training, and I worked with Mid-Island Hospice and took their training, and I worked with them for a while. So I found that I had a knack for being a counselor,
Mm-hmm.
and as I was getting my educational part of it and building the skills, I found that I naturally gravitated towards relationships, and the other area I specialize in is trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a fairly large toolbox to work with people with any kind of relationship, whether it's a couple or whether it's a partnership in business,
Mm-hmm.
a management team, parents and their children. So I have a large toolbox to work with.
Mm.
And I really think of myself more as a relationship and communication specialist.
Mm. But I would be, I'm curious to know how you, is there any difference between how you work with, say, a mother and daughter that don't get along very well and somebody who has suffered trauma? How, like, is there,
A lot of difference. Yeah,
yes, can you talk about that a little bit?
yeah, so there's a lot of difference. One, if I'm working with a relationship, I'm working with how each of those people process and how that where they differ, where they would create what would create a conflict, how to bridge those gaps, what skills in communication they need to learn, and if I'm working with someone with trauma, it's a very, very different process, because I'm working with actually their memory and releasing the emotion off of the memory that's traumatic. And so And I do that in several different ways. It's a bit complicated to explain, but the unconscious mind stores trauma and phobias in a very particular way, and you can work with that memory to release the negative emotion off of it so that they still have the memory, but the memory no longer has any charge to it.
Hmm. Interesting. And very important work, my goodness, with the. So, do you work with people who have post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, because that's basically what the trauma piece would be, isn't it?
Well, not all trauma creates post-traumatic stress disorder, but post-traumatic stress disorder is certainly triggered by trauma.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So, um, I mean, this is really important work that you do, obviously, and so tell me, what is it that gives you joy about it? Where do you get the real? I mean, you've already said you're really, really interested in people and development and so forth, but there's got to be something in there that really, brings that joy in your calling.
Well, I actually have developed a personality profiling system, and it's called PEP Personality Process. And I absolutely love working with people with that because it really assists them in getting to know themselves better, and to give them tools and skills that they can work with themselves to stay in a more balanced way in their own life. And it's wonderful to work with couples or partners in a business, or anybody that's in a relationship that where they are having some area of conflict or misunderstanding, and to see when I go through their processes, to see the aha moments. What I'm often accused of being psychic. It's like, how do you know those things about us? Well, you remember that little form you filled out that told me all that I needed to know. And sometimes it's just very difficult for them to believe that, but it's amazing to see how it enlightens them on each other, or about each other, and about themselves. And then that's a basis to start bridging the gaps, and to start taking things less personally when they in their difficulties. So I find that really, really fun to work with.
Mm. So the interesting thing that I found about this is that this is a tool that you have developed yourself.
Yeah, it's a tool that I developed out of many, many different places. It kind of grew organically. Was the best way that I can put it. I learned certain things from my spiritual studies. I learned certain things from my business studies. I learned things from NLP, and different areas, and things started to come together and formulate this process that I work with, and I've really honed it over the last 25 years, working with my clients and my friends and my business associates and all of those things. So in honing it to that point, now it really truly is something that I find to be really useful to people. And I find a lot of the management teams that I work with, they'll say to me, Nadine, we've done other tools, that tell us about ourselves, but this is the most practical and useful tool that we've had. So.
What jumps to my mind is this whole field of helping men and women communicate well together. And there are some other authors out there, but this is what you're talking about, isn't it? Using a tool that helps each person understand who they are and what's the best way to connect with the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
the interesting thing about my PEP processing, PEP personality processing system is that um, if a man or woman processes the same, I would give them the same information. It doesn't discriminate between sexes, and it doesn't discriminate between cultures either.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So now I remember you saying, you and I haven't talked about this even in the green room as we were preparing, but I remember you saying something about where you plan on going with all of this. I know that you have an ongoing business in central Victoria, and where you teach courses and you do your counseling and so forth. But I remember you saying you were headed toward writing your own book.
Well, I'm more than headed toward that. I'm actually almost finished.
Oh,
Um, I'm actually hoping to have it published by January, and that book will be on the system that I have developed. And at that point, I'd like to start teaching more people about that system, and also, having workshops and facilitating people with that system. So I'll be doing that much more in the future. Yeah.
right on. So right now the focus is get the book finished, eh?
That's the focus at the moment, yes.
So, and I sure do, as a student of people and personal development as well. I sure look forward to that. I just kind of wanted to finish off by just exploring again a little bit from the business perspective, because that's who our audience is here.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how much of your time do you devote to marketing and, let's say, social networking and or networking in general, etc. Where are you on that spectrum?
Well, if I'm honest, I came into the social networking world kicking and screaming. uh, it is something that I have accepted. It is something that I do on a regular basis, weekly. I don't necessarily do it every day, but I certainly make an effort to do something on a weekly basis in the social media world. Um, and I spend a lot of time networking as well out there in the real world, which is also marketing. And in Victoria, one of the most important things to do, I believe. But yes, I believe that social media is here to stay, and I think that we need to embrace it and do what we can with it to build relationships. It's one of the ways people are building relationships today. And, well, I know that you've embraced it long before I did. But for me, it was a challenge at first, because I actually prefer face-to-face.
Well, and that's what's probably one of the values of this hangout, is that we're now able to do so much more electronically, face to face, which is a major step forward, isn't it?
It is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I know that you're not going to mention this, but I know that Nadine has taken on a major role with one of our business women's organizations here, the Peninsula Business Women. She's taken on a major role in helping to move that organization forward, and I think that's part of that whole face-to-face networking and building relationships, and you do that extremely, extremely well. So I'm watching my time here, Nadine, but I've got one last question that I would really like. Is there anything in particular that you would like to promote or that you would like to impart to our viewing audience?
Well, any organization or management team or couple or business partners that really want to learn more about how each of them processes and how they can work more effectively, more successfully together, I encourage them and invite them to have me either come in and do their PEP personality process with them, or to come into the office and have a session with me, because it's really a valuable thing for them to learn. So that's what I would recommend at this point.
And the best way to connect with you, I think our viewers can see that your website is there, and so if they went to your website, they would find your phone number and all the contact information required. So
Yeah.
now, is there any way you could, or have you even thought about this? Is there any way you could do that? Use that tool and then use this medium of connecting with people for interpretation. Have you got that far in your thinking?
Oh, I've got that far in my thinking. I haven't done it yet. But yes, that is one of the things that I would like to look into more in the future. I'd like to be able to do an online tool that I can work with people as well. The thing that I guess I would say to that is, as you know, I'm still needing to learn more about this medium, and I know that you've been helping me to do that, and I appreciate that. So I'll be coming to you for more help.
Well, and I see a really bright future for what you've got on your horizon. I think that's just wonderful. So we're just a little bit over the hour, so I think it's time for us to close. I just want to close the session with an invitation to join my weekly mastermind hangout called Being Your Own CEO. We're there to give and receive support and help remove some of those stumbling blocks that all of we solo entrepreneurs experience. And if you'd like to know more about my solo enterprise programs, be sure to visit my website, workstylelifestyle.com, as you can see on the screen. So this is Lowell Ann, your solo enterprise coach, signing off for now.